Ladies and gentlemen, when it rains, it absolutely pours. And the bad news in South Africa just keeps coming. If it's not locally, our politicians saying stupid stuff and basically making the worst decisions possible, it's our politicians saying stupid stuff and making the worst decisions possible that affects our standing on the global stage. And on the global stage, then we get punished for our politicians saying the stupid stuff and doing the worst stuff in imaginable. You all know about the tariffs coming from the US that is putting an immense amount of pressure on exporters in South Africa specifically because the US is a massive market with which specifically our farmers as well as our automotive industry does a lot of its trade. Well, with those tariffs coming into effect, we've just seen over this week that within one night, one of the largest automotive parts manufacturers in the country lost 750 million rand worth of contracts just like that, cancelled because now with the new tariffs, it's just no longer competitive. And we already know that the citrus industry has also warned that they could be looking at something like 30,000 jobs being lost just in the first year as a result of these new tariffs. But now, to make matters a lot worse, Maersk, the largest shipping giant in the world. Literally, everyone uses them. They are massive and they make sure that the whole world is connected. They're canceling their direct US trade route to Africa's largest economy. In other words, South Africa will no longer have a direct trade route with America supplied by Maersk. Now, are there other companies that could pick up some of the slack? Yes, but not fully, because most of the other shipping companies are nowhere near large enough to handle the quantities of goods that we would send between us and the United States. Moreover, it will take time. It will take anywhere from 5 years to a decade to actually get these new shipping lanes set up by a new company. And if you finally have that, you've already lost most of the businesses that were exporting anyways. Instead, now what Maersk will be doing is they'll still take our stuff, but a lot of our stuff will now go from South Africa to Europe, and then from Europe they'll send it off to America. Now, the company doesn't go into a lot of detail as to why they're actually doing this, right? So even reading through their entire report on all of this, they don't really explain why this is happening. I found a report in 2020, right, that just spoke about their massive problems with the ports of South Africa and how slow the ports in South Africa is and slowing things down. The problem with this, and a lot of people pointed to this as being one of the big reasons, it doesn't quite explain everything, right? Because the ports will still be slow and difficult to work with, even if the goods are just going to Europe, right? That's not going to fix anything. So looking all over, I can't find Maersk actually going into detail as to why this is happening. And so we're left sort of having to speculate a little as to what exactly transpired here. Now, just very quickly, before we get into my speculations on this, the shift comes amid escalating diplomatic tensions between Pretoria and President Donald Trump's administration. They don't actually say this explicitly anywhere in their own reports, but which recently threatened to review South Africa's eligibility under the African Growth Opportunities Act, a crucial trade pact that grants duty-free access to US markets to thousands of African products. Now, of course, the thing there is we already know that this is gone, right? We're never going to get access to AGOA ever again. But then you have a professor that actually spoke to Business Insider about what is happening here, Dr. Ernst van Biljon, that had the following to say: but this is more than just a shipping reshuffle, Dr. van Biljon added. It exposes South Africa's strategic vulnerability in global supply chains. Tariffs and transport constraints now combine to erode margins and undermine long-standing commercial relationships. Direct routes to the US, which previously took 4 to 6 weeks, will now be replaced with detours through Europe's transshipment hubs, adding 2 to 3 weeks and stretching total transit times to 6 to 8 weeks or more during port congestion. The financial impact is equally severe. Rerouting through Europe increases fuel, handling, and operational costs, with freight rates expected to rise by 20 to 40%, transshipment fees of $200 to $250 per container, plus Maersk's peak season surcharges of up to $1,000 for a 40-foot container will further inflate expenses. Add this to the 30% tariffs that's already being charged on our goods, and you quickly figure out that when this comes through, and if this comes through, there will not be a single product in South Africa sold in America at all, because all of these added costs will have to be charged to the American consumer at some point. Because with these at these prices, the producer will just not have the ability to absorb these costs, and so it will have to be passed on, and this will make the product just completely incapable. And that's the problem when you have a government that is running such a poor country and such a poor economy. The smallest little thing can cascade into an avalanche of bad news. Now, Maersk isn't doing this to punish South Africa. They're doing this because the South African government has been resting on their laurels. Maersk, and I do think to some extent the congestion at our ports is a giant problem for Maersk. More ships means more waiting times, and sometimes the waiting times at our ports can be months before these ships actually get to dock because the government is just running a terrible, it's a state-owned enterprise. What do you expect, right? It's bad, and it's going to continue to be bad. But I think there's something more to it. I think Maersk understands that thanks to the new tariffs, an already depleted shipping quantities will lead to even more depleted shipping quantities between America and South Africa. In other words, I think Maersk has looked at what is happening in trade and realized that there's no point. They're sending ships that's half full, maybe a quarter full from South Africa to America. And now with the new tariffs coming into effect, they're going to be sending ships that's maybe a quarter full. And at that point, there is just no point in still exporting goods straight from South Africa to the United States, which just shows the absolute decline and destruction of our economy. And of course, sending it to Europe means that you can send ships that have goods for Europe, maybe some goods for Asia, as well as some goods for America. And then from Europe, those ships can be packed so that they can actually get those ships off to America filled with goods rather than having to send half full ships, from South Africa to America. Fundamentally, guys, I think this is just the first in a long line of bad news that we're going to be getting over the next few months, maybe even the next few years. Because when you have an economy and a country that is constantly on the brink of destruction, the smallest little change can push it over the edge, right? And the smallest little change ends up becoming a big change that has massive effects because your economy has no ability to absorb any of the actual changes as and when it happens. And that, I think, is exactly where South Africa is. We have no ability to absorb anything. We have no ability, no maneuverability, no leg room. We are a country on the ropes. We're basically slaves to the international system. And if the international system sneezes, we take that full on in the mouth, right? And we just have to swallow and hope that we don't get sick. And since we have a government that is obsessed with making us sick, we get sick every single time. It's sad, but this is the reality. My job, I wish I could bring you guys more good news. I truly wish that I could make some videos celebrating some of the cool stuff that happens in South Africa. But my job is to tell you guys the truth, as I find it and as my research shows. It's rarely good here in South Africa. Let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about this. Do you expect things to get worse, better? What are your plans? How are you going to sort of defend yourself and protect yourself and your family from just the growing economic sort of crash down that is happening in South Africa? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, hit the like if you liked it, if you didn't. If you like the content that I make and you think more people should see honest and rational conversation about the situation in South Africa, I ask that you hit that like button because it helps. Hit that subscribe button because many of you are not yet subscribed. And leave a comment because YouTube does reward engaged viewership. Then if you want to support this channel a little bit more and make it financially viable, then please consider giving just $3 a month over on YouTube or over on Patreon. Links are in the description down below or just the join button below this video. Any and all support that you guys give me very much is appreciated. As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. A peace.